This is Bob, and I wanted to take the time to shoot a video of a Trex clone utilizing, for the most part, KDS components with this helicopter. It worked out great, and we'll be highlighting and showing you the components of this helicopter and to show you the kit here. This is my first kit to put together, and it went together surprisingly well, and it was not that difficult, and it is something that you can do, and you can just take the opportunity and time to go slow and be able to put it together. But you can see the finished components here and the finished product here. We'll come back and highlight some of the components on the helicopter, but we'll take now the time to go through and look at each part of the build as it's laid out here and how it goes together. So just take the time to pen down here at the frame, carbon fiber frame, and all of the different parts starting at the bearing blocks, also the motor mounts. We'll move over here to the motor mount, and you'll be able to see the motor mount here, how it's set up. You will need to Loctite those screws that go into the motor mount to make sure those are Loctited in. And on the bearing blocks, you'll want to make sure that you get those Loctited on both sides, and that will make for a nice, sturdy, solid frame. The tray there at the back of the helicopter, just below the tail boom area, is where your receiver will go, and then you have the bottom tray that holds your ESC onto the bottom of the frame there. It worked out great. So be sure and do not Loctite the screws that go into plastic, because if you do, you won't be able to get the screws out without damaging the plastic. So just metal screws that are going into metal, you want to be sure and Loctite those in nice and firm. We'll move over here to where we have the battery tray and the anti-rotation bracket. Also, you'll note on here that we do have a package, an accessories package here that has the rods here that will hold the canopy on. Also, there are some little black washers, and we'll move back over here to the frame, and we'll show the places here where the servo goes in. Right here, that there are some black washers that will go in there. Those are utilized to be able to hold your servos in place. So those black washers go into those cavities there where those servo plates are, and that will help hold your servos nice and firm into place there. And that's what that accessories bag is there. So we move back over here to where you see the head. You can see that you have the fly bar paddles here, and you also see the head that comes pre-assembled, and it has all of the different rods on it, and all the different hookups to the swash plate are already in place there. And so those are control rods that go down to your servos, and that's hooked up. We'll pin in here on the head, give you an opportunity to take a look at the head. You will need to take the time to pull those screws out that are holding the head on there, and Loctite those screws back in after you've taken the time to lubricate the washers that are on the inside, or lubricate the bearings that are on this inside there. That's a nice head set up there, and but do take the time to take those out, get those, but be sure and be careful as you take each one of those off to make sure that you get those washers back in place as they've been taken off there. You do get plenty of instructions with the instruction manual that comes with this kit, and you can look at the instruction manual and see how the washers go in, but you want to be sure and be careful about how those come out and that they go back in there the same way that they came out. We'll move over here now to the tail assembly. Very nice setup for the tail assembly. All that you'll need to do is be sure and put Loctite on the screws that go into the metal portions of that. Your belt that's already been pre-assembled and put in there has already been taken care of. Now, one of the things you'll do is you put the belt through your tail boom. Is once you get your your belt through the tail boom, be sure and rotate that 90 degrees in there, and when you get your belt in there, and then put it on your pulley and check to make sure that the tail is going counterclockwise as the main blades are going clockwise, and then that way you'll be sure and have that set up properly. So be sure and check that as you put your tail assembly together, and that you're putting your belt on. So rotate that and you should be just fine on getting your tail assembly set up. We'll move on to the horizontal and vertical stabilizer here. Those are carbon fiber, and that works out great, nice and durable. You've got your tail blades on there, all the different screws that are involved with that for your vertical and horizontal stab. And then also you have a accessories packet here that has Velcro for your battery straps. You have your tail blade, or your main blade holders on there, twist tie or cinch ties on there for tightening down everything. You've even got canopy grommets that are in there, and then also you can see you've also got a Allen wrench that will be you can use for your tightening up the screws and such as that. It's specifically designed for that. We'll move out just a little bit, and you can see the tail boom here, and within the tail boom it has the supports for the tail boom that goes onto the main frame, and then it also has the rod that goes in there for the flybar paddles are also in the tail boom setup. And then up here at the top you'll see that you've got the mounting bracket for your tail servo, and that worked out really nice, and it goes on there and it really looks good. Then over here you have the landing skids set up, and very easy to assemble and put on, and it attaches to the bottom of the frame. And then we'll move over here. We'll see some of the boxes that we use for the components for the KDS. We have the KDS 3500 kV motor, and that's got more than enough power to take this helicopter off and do whatever you feel like you need to do. 3D flying or just regular circuits, it works out really great, plenty powerful. It's got the pinion gear that's involved in that. It's also got the screws that go on to the motor mounts. It's got the screws inside there as well. You've got your main gear in there. Then also I was surprised with these blades. These blades worked out great. They're fiberglass blades, and they worked out great, and they're balanced properly for this helicopter. So it worked out great on that. Now we'll move back over to the helicopter and zoom on a few components on the helicopter, and we'll move over here and take a look at the gyro. Very important part of this build is the KDS gyro, and that is the KDS 820 gyro. And very nice setup for this gyro. It's got lots of different settings. It's got the delay switch on it. It's got your limit switch, and then it's got your servo reversing, and then it's also got the switch in there for digital or analog servos. So we've got all that set up in there. And then we'll move over here to the tail servo. We selected an aligned tail servo for 450 size helicopter. The speed on that servo is 0.08, so it's plenty quick and plenty strong to be able to handle the tail assembly and setup for this. It worked out great. Down here on the bottom, you'll be able to see the KDS KDS receiver, and we utilized the KDS 8-channel receiver, and that worked out great. And so that's a good little receiver, and it matches up with the KDS radio. And then we have the ESC that's set up here, and that worked out great. Hobby King ESC, 40 amp ESC, and the test flights that I've had, it is absolutely not even warm at all after having flown it for an entire battery. So I was really impressed with that, and it worked out great. You will need to follow the instructions on getting your throttle limit set on that, so that you'll be able to have complete control of the throttle set for your ESC. Then also you'll need to set your settings on that for either a soft start or a super soft start. I chose the super soft start on this to spool up the helicopter, so it worked out good. But either one will work fine. Also, the power plant on this is the KDS 3500 kV motor. It works out great. Very powerful, very strong. You don't need any more motor than that for this helicopter, and it worked out great. Again, you can see the head and how it's set up, and see how the head is set on there, and it works out great for this helicopter. We'll move over here to the canopy, and we'll be using the KDS canopy for this, the KDS 450QS canopy. It works good. It fits on there, plenty of room for the battery, and it worked out good. Now we'll swing over here to the transmitter. For the star of the show is this KDS transmitter. It's the KDS K7X2 radio, and this is the same radio that came on the KDS 450QS, which is a fantastic helicopter. Flies unbelievably well, and we utilized this transmitter here, and it worked out great. It also pairs up nicely with the KDS 8-channel receiver, very inexpensive receiver, and it paired up nicely with this radio, and it worked out great. So we're going to zoom down here and talk a little bit about the radio, and talk a little bit about the settings that was utilized for the radio. Now, one of the things I want to do is when we turn the transmitter on, I'll show you how to toggle back and forth the different models. So what you want to do is you want to come over here to your menu, and you want to hold your menu button. And then what you want to do is you want to turn on your transmitter, and you can see that it's asking you to verify which model you're going to be using. So we'll move that up and down to Model 1, Model 2, Model 3. This particular transmitter, there are 7 different models that it can hold in there. So you can put 7 different models. I've got 2 on this transmitter so far, and it works out fine. Also, whenever you get ready to activate that particular model, all you got to do is come over here and hit your escape. And that sets it up, and you're ready to go with that model. So be sure and check your model there. And then also you'll notice the big feature here is the timer. And once you get your timer set, you can move your timer, and once you move your throttle, it starts the timer. And you can see that it starts the timer to work here when it gets started, and you just move the throttle back, and the timer starts, and you're ready to roll with your time. And then as it gets close down to the bottom, what happens is you are able to hear some beeps, and those beeps will tell you that your flight time is just about ready to end. But we'll zoom in here and go over the different settings that I've got for my helicopter, and it has 11 different settings that you'll be able to utilize to set your helicopter up, which is more than enough to get this project off the ground. First thing we'll go to is the servo reversing. That is for your servos, whichever servos you choose to use for this. I did use the solo servos. They worked fine, and there were some of those that I had to reverse. And so you see the normal, and we'll just move up to the different. You see the reverse on there, normal and reverse on there. And so we got those set up there, and it goes all the way through the 7 or 8 channels. And so that's your servo reversing. You'll set those according to how your servos move. And then you have your endpoints, and that's plus 100 and minus 100 on each one of those, so that you have the full travel of your servos. Then we'll move into your trim setting, and that's to where you can get your servos nice and horizontal, your cyclic servos nice and horizontal. Along with your tail servos, you get those nice and horizontal, so that you'll be able to set up your swash plate correctly, so that your trim's there, and you'll have different settings depending on how you set your servos up. Next, you have your dual rate settings there, 100, plus 100, and then 60. And so we have the different sets for that. And you see the different settings on that, on each one of those. Okay. Then we have our exponents, and I have no exponents set up on this at all. And then we have our throttle hold, and that throttle hold is always on. And your switch up here at the top, the one here on the top on the right-hand side of the transmitter, right there, when you push that away from you, that activates the ESC and activates the helicopter. You move that forward, and that turns the motor off, so you want to be sure and get used to utilizing that on there. That's a nice feature for your transmitter. This switch up here at the top is your idle up switch. When it's pushed away from you, the idle up is off. When it's pushed towards you, the idle up is on, or at least that's what I've found. And so be sure and do not activate that, your idle up switch. So next we'll move through here, and your throttle hold, and then we'll do your gyro settings. And this is my gyro setting for my KDS 820 gyro is set at 29 plus 29. Then we'll move into the idle up mode is at plus 63. And I found that 29 is really the best set for me to settle the tail down and to get it to lock in. Next, we'll move into the auxiliary set, and that's just 1 and 2 on the auxiliary, and that's default settings there. Now, this is our throttled hold, or our throttle settings, and that's 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. Then we move up to our idle up. It's 100, 90, 80, 90, 100. And then we move into our pitch curves, and for normal flight we have 35, we have 43, 50, 68, 85. Idle up is 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. Then we have our auto rotation, and that is we have that set up at 0, 50, or I'm sorry, that was a linear curve on the for the throttle hold, or the pitches for your hold there, as the auto rotation is a linear curve on that, so it's 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100. Let me move back to that again, and I'll show that to you one more time. Okay, the pitch curves, normal, idle up, and then your hold for auto rotation. And then lastly, the swash plate settings. I did have some problem with the servos not going in the right direction, so what I had to do was I had to come in, and there's my ailerons. I'm sorry, let me go back through that again. There's 50 for the aileron. Elevators minus 50. And then the pitch servo is at plus 39. So I did want to go back and show you that again. That's minus 50 on that because I could not get that through the servo reversing back on the other settings. Couldn't get that to go right, so I went back to my swash plate setting and got that taken care of. So that takes care of all the different settings for the KDS K7X2 radio, and it's a great radio. It's got lots of functionality to it, 7 different models you can put in there with all the different parameters for each one of the models can go in there, and it's a great radio, great feel, and it flies very well, and it takes care of this helicopter very nicely. So once again, we've got the helicopter, it's finished build there. I enjoyed building it. It worked out great, and it does fly good. I hope this helps. Thank you.